Okay, so let's start another talk. The topic is using Fedora and OSTree for IoT, presented by Peter Robinson.
Hi everyone, I'm Peter Robinson, the Principal IoT Architect at Red Hat for Platform. I'm going to give a basic overview of where we're going with Fedora or IoT on Fedora, and then give a hopefully working brief demo of OSTree and Atomic at the end of it. It was working 5 minutes ago, an hour ago. I'm sure it'll be fine.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah, so who, what, when, where. So I've been slowly working towards a IoT spin and an IoT SIG in Fedora for the last year. There's been a bunch of random dependencies, and it's also not my only part of the IoT job. So I end up being dragged here, there, and everywhere. But we've now got to the stage where I think all the dependencies are in place. The Fedora Council now believes it is the right thing to do. And so I get to present to the council in a couple of weeks' time. So if anyone's interested and follows along with the council, I'll be presenting there, and no doubt there'll be a lot of hairy questions for me to answer. I'm going to cover the audience of IoT, a bit of a technical overview with Atomic, with the demo, and then cover some, like, what I'm planning with community and communications. So, the Fedora Council objective. The council chooses a number of different key objectives each year in which they want to focus on and where they believe are sort of growth areas within the Fedora project, and new initiatives and various other bits and pieces. It's mostly a non-technical thing, but by IoT becoming an objective for the council, it gives us a lot more focus and gives me, or the Fedora IoT community, a certain level of resources and backing to help out. And so I hope IoT will be accepted as an objective from the council, and basically that should happen. I think it's happening on Valentine's Day, because, you know, romantic. We can automatically set the mood lighting. Woohoo! Anyway, what is the audience of IoT in Fedora? Well, that's a very interesting question. For a lot of people in the community, IoT is Home Assistant or various other home platforms to, you know, dim lights, open garage doors, monitor temperature and thermostats, and various other bits and pieces. From a Red Hat sort of enterprisey sort of space, it would be more industrial and that sort of focus. IoT as a general industry will pick one of a billion different things, from auto-driving cars to God knows what else. So I think as we go along, the audience will become clear, but I'm going to be focusing on IoT gateways, make it easy for the community to use it for home automation and various other bits and pieces, and I strongly suspect our focus audience will evolve and grow as the community grows. So it's going to be let's focus on a few things and see where we grow and see what interest comes. From a technical point of view, it's going to be interesting for Fedora because I intend it to be a purely Atomic initiative. So sure, there'll be RPMs and various other bits and pieces going into that, but unlike the standard Fedora distribution, that's not going to be part of the output. We're going to focus on various devices from the Raspberry Pi right through to the enterprise stuff. I've been speaking to a bunch of SoC manufacturers. They've got a bunch of ideas. But I plan on using it as because we don't have basically legacy IoT users, we don't need to care so much about the past. So we can go, right, it is atomic. If you don't like that, let's have a discussion about it. But we can do away with a lot of the legacy because we just don't need to deal with that sort of stuff. So we can sort of look, ask questions, look around, and for want of a better word, we can do things properly from the outset. And I think the IoT space needs that. We're going to be fairly tightly focused, security, updates, ease of use. We're going to be doing monthly releases, so similar to the way the Atomic project does 2-week Atomic releases, will be not quite that quick, but the intention is to release early, release often, basically having a rolling distribution. So shortly after Fedora 28 comes out, the stable branch will be rebased straight onto that, and like every month, there'll be new feature releases with security stuff in between. And then focus on a lot of the Fedora CI stuff, how we can help contribute to the automation around the CI stuff in Fedora, how we can test it across numerous devices, how an SoC manufacturer or a device manufacturer or a 3D printer maker who might want to consume Fedora Atomic or on their devices, how they can integrate it into their CI platform or their devices into our CI platform so that they can provide feedback of what's working and what's broken in an automated manner. I mean, ultimately, we don't have a huge amount of people dedicated to work on IoT, mostly just me, and I tend to be inherently lazy, so the more I can automate, the better. From a community point of view, well, we've got the Fedora community, we've got a bunch of people in the ARM extended community that are interested. I'm not really a community person. Well, I am a community person. I don't have all the smarts of some of the community managers, so it'll be interesting to see how that grows, and it'll obviously be a focus of myself and others, and we'll see where we go with that. But I look forward to it expanding. And now I'm going to do a quick demo. And I can work out where my mouse has gone. So here we have U-boot. So Raspberry Pi by default doesn't use that. U-boot now implements support for UEFI, so it's searching for a network. We have grub. The init RD is quite large and the SD card's quite slow, so it takes a little while to load the init RD. And where did my screen go?
Did you test this on the projector?
No.
There you go. This is the part where I'm faking it up secretly.
Damn, I've been caught. You, out of the building.
There's something.
Right, and so if we just log in, oh come on, don't ask me the hard things.
You can bootstrap Fedora on new architectures, but you have no idea how to do it.
To be fair, you're not far from the truth. So let's clear it and put it up the top. So you can see it's a Raspberry Pi 3. It's running ARM64 F27 kernel. And it's running Atomic. So that's pretty much the demo. So yeah, so this is going to be basically the basis of IoT. So I'm done, see ya. Right, and then let's see if I can get slides back. Various methods of communication. There is a soon-to-be approved, hopefully, Fedora IoT Twitter handle, Fedora IoT IRC channel, and a mailing list. And we'll probably change that around as things evolve, but that's what we have at the moment. Any questions? Laura?
So IoT a lot of times ends up having sensors or other connections to the outside world, which is a slightly different model than usually for Atomic. Do you see any particular issues with trying to, say, do containers or stuff with stuff that, say, interacts with the outside world?
So the question is, IoT has sensors and various other things that interact with the outside world, and how does that fit with the Atomic model? You mean, so connecting the sensors and using them within Atomic to be able to read the data, or to push that data then to, say, the internet?
I mean, both. I mean, do you see any particular problems with the Atomic model in terms of trying to do IoT-specific things that, say, the traditional enterprise uses Atomic?
Yes, there are a number of issues that I'm aware of, because like Atomic as an image is fairly defined, like adding layers on top of that, getting access, whether it's via containers or other things, getting the sensors applications that are running in, say, a container, being able to access sensors directly attached to the hardware and the access controls around that. Yes, I'm sure there's lots of potential issues. And I've thought of lots of them. I don't have solutions to all of them, and I'm sure there is a lot more that I haven't even discovered yet. But you know, I've always liked a challenge.
I'd say in the worst case scenario, you just package layer what you have traditionally done and don't want containers, but migrate to the model where you want to run.
And I mean, ultimately, like containers with access to hardware, like the Flatpak does it quite well in the Android style, prompt you for this, but obviously it's a device where you may not have a user interface to prompt for the authentication. On the flip side, I've spoken to the enterprise container guys who are now needing to pass through things like network function virtualization, NICs, GPUs, and various other bits and pieces. And I know they're dealing with how you give access to hardware through to containers. So this is, in the container Atomic OSTree world, it's a problem that has been fixed and non-fixed in a couple of different ways. And so there are people, it's certainly not an issue that is solely an IoT problem. Yes, so Stephen just said the system container approach seems to be a natural way to do that. And yep.
In your demo, was that Fedora Atomic Host? I'm wondering about what's in the tree and if there's going to be...
So it is, at the moment, is just the standard Fedora Atomic Host with a couple of little bits and pieces added, like Raspberry Pi firmware and what have you. I'm going to, the Kickstart and all the process around it is all a bit glued together to get the demo to work, but now it's working. I'll be working with Dusty, and he's bothering me about it, and vice versa. But I'll be working to get all of that into Fedora, and we should be, before long, spitting out as part of the 2-week Atomic process, standard Fedora Atomic host for ARM single board computers, so Raspberry Pi, Pine 64, you know, that sort of stuff. So yeah, that is basically pretty close to vanilla Fedora Atomic OSTree for ARM64.
So that's what you see now as kind of potential edge devices. Do you have any like thoughts or ideas what could go wrong as a project to be a gateway?
Yes, so the question is, in this particular case, it's an edge device. Do I have any ideas around gateways? I've got lots of stuff around gateways because from an enterprise point of view, that's something that my management is very interested in. I work as part of my role with Lenaro in their IoT group, and they've got a big focus on gateways. So one of the big use cases that is definitely part of my job is an IoT gateway, and that's both to wired and wireless. So from a wired point of view, I'm looking at and dealing with RS485 and the protocol that slips my mind that sits on top of that often, CAN and that sort of stuff. From a wireless point of view, Bluetooth LE, Bluetooth Mesh, 802.15.4, and a bunch of protocols around that. I'm getting fairly regular questions about things like LoRa and that sort of stuff. So we'll be primarily focused on open standards, so 6LoWPAN, bits and pieces like that. But gateway will be a big focus for me in the next year. Yes?
So have you had any better success than we've had in the past in communications with some of the IoT device vendors, getting far more and getting them to send patches upstream rather than their own private trees?
So the question is about having luck with firmware vendors, with upstream. Yes, to a degree. A lot of the groups that I'm dealing with at the moment are not the end vendors that are creating the devices, but the SoC vendors. And I'm having, it's an open, ongoing discussion. We actually have quite a few SoC vendors. So in Fedora 27, I think we had about 10 different actual SoC vendors contributing to Fedora, testing Fedora on ARM, and various other bits and pieces. So, I mean, I've been working on ARM in Fedora for about 8 years now, and, you know, it's been a long road, and a long road to build relationships with these companies, and to the point where I think, I had a meeting September with a large SoC vendor, and they're like, why would you want to do whatever the particular change was I was discussing? And I explained it to them, and they're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. We'll go and speak to our chip designers and see if we can integrate that into the next generation of chips. So it is coming to fruition. It's been a slow road, and we've got a long way to go yet. I mean, things like the U-boot, where U-boot's running UEFI, when Dennis and myself first came up with the concept of a generic distro boot process in U-boot, we were howled down by the U-boot guys. And now, with the UEFI and stuff, the U-boot maintainers are going, if you don't support distro boot in your new SoC or device or what have you, you're not coming in and we're not taking your code. Go away and do distro boot. This is the way we do stuff. And ARM themselves even has a standardization process using the U-boot UEFI stuff for embedded devices where they're trying to go, this is going to be a standard way we boot stuff and support stuff. So yes, we are having some luck. It is taking time, but ultimately there are baby steps and things are happening, and they're starting to listen, which is really cool. Dennis, and then... As I said, when I go to the council and they approve it, we'll evolve it from there. Yep. So the question is, how would you handle a custom kernel configuration in an atomic tree? And I'm going to turn that straight to Colin sitting next to you. And because this is a question I've had, this is a question that I don't have an answer for.
custom kernel build.
Yeah, so like the Fedora build supports InfiniBand and God knows what else, and a Raspberry Pi doesn't need that, and you know, so.
I have a talk at 3 that's basically focused on the host update side, like not with the containers, but the atomic host upgrade part. The short answer to your question is, ironically, we don't actually support replacing the kernel easily on the client side, even though the whole point is atomic swap configure. It's just on that through. But on the server side, right, and this is actually a whole big thread. Like, are we providing something that people run directly, or are we providing people the tools to build their own? Right. So obviously, RPM OSTree is pretty opinionated that you only feed it RPM. So if you have a custom kernel build, you drop your kernel RPM wherever you want, however you create you go, however you want to do it, building copper or whatever, and you can just, like, this is another key thing. Fedora Atomic is just a list of packages.
Yeah.
There's no magic secret sauce.
So
you basically, you can just make your own, we call it compose your own tree, but so basically we support both, but we don't support easily doing the client.
So I have a few, so the answer from Colin for those listening in was there is no way to do it currently on the client side when you're running in the OSTree there, but it's easy enough to do on the compose side. I myself have basically come to that conclusion as well, and I have a couple of different ideas around maybe ways of enhancing that where we can provide a standard IoT user space and then maybe use like an atomic layer to put a custom kernel on top of that and give it priority to the other one. Or we'll also probably be documenting and explaining how people can create their own install based on our base IoT tree. At the moment, my focus is going to be in the short term is using the standard Fedora components. I mean, in the ARM space, we support probably 300 or 400 different ARM boards. In the 64-bit space in Fedora 28, we'll support around 50. But it's impossible for us to test all of those. And so from an IoT perspective, I'm going to select half a dozen or so devices as reference devices, and we'll be doing the default on there. As to how we take it from here's a bunch of demos and a very generic image to how you can use this fairly focused for your own devices, it's certainly on my roadmap, but it's more in the future. We're out of time.
Do we have anybody incubating in the community or trying to find ways to get the community active with like incubation ideas? I guess what I'm thinking of is along the lines of a lot of people like to buy cheap farm hardware and put like TF sense on it and do their home router. Wouldn't it be cool if I could have like my home router be like
So the question is about incubation and ideas. My plan is to get the initial spin out and get the release process in place, and then once people have got something they can physically start to poke, then start to incubate on top of that. So yes, the plan is certainly there. I suspect mid to late this year that's the way we'll be going.
Thank you very much.
That's fantastic news on the vendors, because I know that's been a sore point with all the whole ARM infrastructure.
And the thing is, so like, all the stuff that I'm doing with the vendors is distribution agnostic. Like,
Yeah, it helps everybody.
obviously I'm a Red Hat guy,
Yeah.
but it's all about how we distribute the environment side.
Sure, the Raspberry guys have the same problem, and it's the same thing. So I agree. Is there anything you need help with that we can do?
I spilled water there.
I'm a Red Hatter as well, and I'm very interested. I'm a solutions architect and customer.
So
Yeah, so just give me an IRC, because as things evolve, there'll be huge amounts of things to do. Conversations can be had, all of that.
Okay, well, I'm Alex Jacobs. Good talking to you.
It's Peter.